Snow swirled across the Belgian countryside that December afternoon. The year was 1944. The date was the 18th. The time showed 13:47 hours on military chronometers. A German tank commander pressed binoculars against his eyes. What he witnessed defied every principle of armored combat he understood. An American vehicle had materialized on his flank like a phantom. 3 rapid shots erupted from its gun. Then it vanished into the white landscape before his gunner could even swing their turret around. Flames consumed the Tiger Y tank behind him. Germany's most feared war machine sat burning in the snow. The crew inside never knew what killed them. The German commander stared at empty terrain where death had appeared and disappeared in seconds. What this panzer officer couldn't comprehend was revolutionary thinking in action. American engineers had created something that violated everything Germans believed about tank warfare. While German minds focused on thicker armor and bigger guns, American designers had chosen a completely different path. They built a killer that hunted rather than slugged, a weapon designed to strike and vanish before enemies could fight back. The M18 Hellcat represented warfare philosophy that contradicted decades of German success. German armored thinking had ruled European battlefields since 1940. Their doctrine rested on simple mathematics. Heavier armor plus bigger guns always equals victory. This formula had produced the Panzer IV. Then came the Panther. Finally arrived the Tiger Verse. 56 tons of German engineering mounted an 88mm cannon. This gun could destroy any Allied tank at distances beyond 2,000 meters. German crews had grown accustomed to invincibility. Their confidence had hardened into dangerous assumption by late 1944. Wehrmacht training emphasized frontal battles where German superiority would prove decisive. Tank commanders learned to find defensive positions. Wait for enemy armor to approach. Destroy it at maximum range before it could respond effectively. North Africa had validated this approach brilliantly. Normandy's hedgerow country had proven it devastatingly effective. German High Command saw no reason to question proven methods. Field Marshal Walter Model commanded Army Group B that December. He organized his panzer forces according to these time-tested principles. Model's intelligence officers had studied American tank destroyers extensively. Captured documents showed the M10 was slow and thinly armored. Its gun barely scratched Panther frontal armor. German staff calculated that Tigers and Panthers could engage American armor at ranges where return fire would prove ineffective. What German intelligence failed to detect was fundamental change brewing in American armored thinking. This transformation had been developing since North African campaigns. American armor officers had analyzed every tank battle from Kasserine Pass through Normandy breakout. Their conclusion challenged conventional military wisdom completely. In modern mechanized warfare, mobility could prove more valuable than armor protection. This concept violated everything tank designers had believed since World War I. Since tanks first appeared on battlefields, engineers had prioritized protection and firepower above all else. American theorists proposed something radical instead. Accept vulnerability in exchange for speed that prevented enemies from achieving firing solutions. Colonel Andrew Bruce commanded the Tank Destroyer Center at Camp Hood, Texas. He had been developing these revolutionary concepts since 1942. Bruce studied combat reports with scientific precision. A critical pattern emerged from the data. Tank destroyers rarely survived prolonged fights with German armor. The M10 Wolverine mounted a 3-inch gun and achieved 30 miles per hour maximum speed. It was simply too slow to exploit opportunities or escape when outgunned. What American forces needed was something entirely different, Bruce argued. a vehicle that could reach firing positions faster than enemy guns could traverse, deliver killing shots with precision, disappear before return fire arrived at their location. The specifications Bruce submitted to the Ordnance Department in early 1943 seemed impossible to achieve. Maximum speed exceeding 50 miles per hour. A 76mm gun capable of penetrating German armor at combat ranges. Weight under 20 tons to maximize mobility. Open-top turret to reduce weight and improve crew awareness. Buick Motor Division engineers received the challenge of creating this unprecedented weapon. Their design prioritized speed above every other consideration. The hull used thin armor plate. Maximum thickness measured only 1 inch compared to the Tiger's 4-inch protection. The Continental R975 radial engine had originally been designed for aircraft. It produced 450 horsepower of raw power. The Torquematic transmission provided controlled differential steering. This allowed impossibly tight turns at high speed. Every component was selected for minimum weight and maximum performance. Aberdeen Proving Ground hosted testing in October 1943. The results shocked experienced observers. The prototype M18 achieved 55 miles per hour on level roads. This was faster than most wheeled vehicles of the era. It could accelerate from complete standstill to 30 miles per hour in under 20 seconds. The power-to-weight ratio of 22.5 horsepower per ton gave acceleration German tanks couldn't match. Most remarkably, controlled differential steering allowed the M18 to execute 360-degree turns in its own length while moving at speed. The 76mm M1A1 gun was lighter than the Tiger's 88mm weapon, but it could penetrate 93mm of armor at 1,000 yards using standard ammunition. The open-top turret allowed 360-degree traverse in under 8 seconds. The Tiger required 60 seconds for full turret rotation. An experienced Hellcat crew could acquire targets, fire, and displace in under 30 seconds total time. Summer 1944 saw M18 production at Buick facilities reach full capacity. The first tank destroyer battalions receiving Hellcats underwent intensive training in Bruce's new tactics. Crews learned to think like light cavalry rather than traditional tankers. Never engage frontally was the first rule. Always attack from flanks or rear was the second. Fire and move constantly was the third. Use terrain for concealment rather than protection was the fourth. The tactical manual for M18 operations stated explicitly that the Hellcat does not fight fair. It strikes from ambush positions. It attacks from flanks. It appears in positions the enemy considers impossible to reach. Survival depends on not being where the enemy expects when he returns fire. This represented complete philosophical departure from German armored doctrine. The first Hellcat battalions arrived in Europe during July 1944. German intelligence officers examined destroyed vehicles and noted the thin armor. They assumed the Americans had deployed another inadequate tank destroyer. Reports to Wehrmacht headquarters described the M18 as lightly armored and similar to existing American tank destroyers. No significant threat to panzer formations. This assessment would prove catastrophically wrong in the coming months. The 630th Tank Destroyer Battalion was the first American unit fully equipped with Hellcats. They landed in France on August 1st. Their baptism of fire came 2 weeks later during the Falaise Pocket operation. German panzer units attempting to escape Allied encirclement encountered something they had never faced before. American armor that could appear on their flanks faster than German commanders could reposition their forces to respond. Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Davis commanded the 630th. He described the engagement in his after-action report with clinical precision. German tanks were configured for frontal engagement, Davis wrote. When our Hellcats appeared on their flanks at high speed, Their doctrine failed them completely. They attempted to turn and face us, but we were already gone, repositioning for another strike. We destroyed 11 German tanks without losing a single Hellcat that day. The true revelation of Hellcat capabilities came during the German Ardennes offensive, beginning December 16, 1944. Field Marshal Model's battle plan called for rapid armored thrusts through the Ardennes forest. They would exploit the weakly defended American sector. German intelligence had identified this area as unsuitable for Allied armor operations. The terrain was too restrictive, they believed. The roads were too narrow for effective tank deployment. Model's panzer commanders expected to face American infantry with limited anti-tank capabilities. What they encountered instead was a new form of armored warfare that exploited the very terrain restrictions German planners thought would protect them. The M18 Hellcat thrived in exactly the conditions that restricted heavier tanks. Its narrow profile and exceptional maneuverability turned German assumptions upside down. The 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion, equipped with 17 M18 Hellcats, was positioned near Saint-Vith when the German offensive began. Major Harold Williamson commanded the battalion. He received intelligence reports of German armor advancing along multiple approach routes. Traditional doctrine called for establishing defensive positions and engaging enemy armor at maximum range. Williamson recognized that against Tigers and Panthers, stationary defense meant certain destruction. Instead, Williamson implemented mobile defense tactics developed specifically for the Hellcat. His battalion dispersed into 4 vehicle platoons. Each was assigned a sector with multiple pre-planned firing positions and withdrawal routes. The concept was elegant in its simplicity. Observe German armor approaching. Race to optimal firing positions. Engage from flank or rear angles. Displace before return fire could arrive. December 17th at 06:30 hours brought the first engagement. It demonstrated the new doctrine's devastating effectiveness perfectly. A German column consisting of 4 Tiger I tanks and supporting infantry advanced along the Schönberg Road. Sergeant Robert Hayes commanded an M18 platoon. He positioned his vehicles in concealment 800 meters from the road. German procedure called for the lead tank to advance, while supporting vehicles provided overwatch. This was standard tactics for dealing with American armor. Hayes waited patiently until the entire column entered his killing zone. At 06:47 hours, all 4 Hellcats fired simultaneously. The engagement lasted exactly 43 seconds. 4 Tigers were burning wrecks. Hayes's platoon was already displacing to secondary positions 2 kilometers distant. German infantry reported being engaged by American armor. But when supporting units arrived, they found only destroyed Tigers and empty firing positions. The pattern repeated throughout December 17th across the entire front. German armored columns found themselves under attack from positions that seemed impossible. Killing fire came from directions their intelligence indicated contained no American armor. Strikes appeared from unexpected ranges and disappeared before effective response was possible. The 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion claimed 18 German armored vehicles destroyed on the first day of combat. Their losses totaled 1 M18 damaged by artillery fire, later recovered and repaired. German after-action reports from December 17th revealed complete confusion about what they were facing. One panzer commander reported being engaged by American armor from a tree line at 800 meters. He returned fire, but the enemy had displaced before his rounds arrived. He pursued to the last known position and found nothing. 10 minutes later, engagement came from the opposite flank. The enemy again disappeared before effective response was possible. The fundamental problem was speed differential. Tiger-eyed tanks could achieve 24 miles per hour maximum speed on roads. Panthers could manage 29 miles per hour under ideal conditions. Both required several minutes to traverse their turrets and achieve firing solutions. The Hellcat could reach 50 miles per hour on the same roads. Its turret could traverse 360 degrees in under 8 seconds. German crews were fighting an enemy that moved faster than their decision-making cycle allowed. The German command structure, built on decades of successful armored doctrine, struggled to comprehend what was happening in the Ardennes. Reports flooding into Field Marshal Model's headquarters described impossible scenarios. American armor appearing simultaneously in multiple locations, engaging from extreme flanks where no tanks should be able to operate, vanishing before counterattacks could develop. Model's intelligence officers suspected exaggerated reports from panicked crews. December 18th at 0900 hours saw Model convene an emergency meeting with his panzer commanders. The location was 5th Panzer Army Headquarters in Gerolstein. Colonel Heinrich Bauer commanded the 501st Heavy Panzer Battalion. He presented reconnaissance photographs showing M18 track patterns in the snow. The evidence revealed American tank destroyers moving at speeds German intelligence had considered impossible for tracked vehicles. Bauer's analysis identified the core problem facing German forces. These American vehicles are achieving tactical positions faster than our forces can respond, he explained. Our Tigers require 5 to 7 minutes to reposition and achieve firing solutions. The American tank destroyers are completing their entire attack cycle in under 60 seconds. We are not fighting tanks, Bauer concluded. We are fighting cavalry mounted on tracked vehicles. The Wehrmacht Tactical Manual for Countering American Armor had been printed in September 1944. It dedicated only 3 paragraphs to tank destroyers. The doctrine assumed all American armored vehicles would attempt frontal engagement where German armor superiority would prove decisive. There were no procedures for countering an enemy that refused direct combat. No tactics for fighting vehicles that attacked only from positions of absolute advantage. Model authorized immediate tactical modifications across his entire command. Panzer columns were ordered to deploy reconnaissance elements 2,000 meters forward and 1,000 meters on each flank. Supporting infantry would sweep terrain before armor advanced through any area. The modifications added hours to movement times and consumed fuel German logistics could barely provide. More critically, the changes assumed German forces could detect Hellcats before engagement occurred. This assumption the Americans were systematically proving false every day. The 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion, operating in the northern Ardennes sector, had perfected what they called carousel tactics. Lieutenant James Patterson documented the procedure in his operations log with technical precision. Position 4. Hellcats at compass points around suspected enemy route, he wrote. When German armor enters the kill zone, engage from all directions simultaneously. Enemy confusion prevents coordinated response. Withdraw before they determine primary threat axis. December 19th at 11:15 hours saw Patterson's platoon execute carousel tactics against a German column near Stavelot. 6 Panthers and 3 Tigers entered the designated killing area. Within 90 seconds, all 9 German vehicles were burning. Radio intercepts recorded German transmissions during the engagement. Under attack from all sides came the panicked voice. Cannot identify enemy positions. Require immediate support. Before reinforcements could arrive, Patterson's Hellcats had displaced 7 kilometers to pre-planned assembly areas. The psychological impact on German crews exceeded even the physical destruction they witnessed. Panzer commanders who had dominated European battlefields for 4 years found themselves hunted by an enemy they couldn't catch. They couldn't fight what they couldn't predict or locate. Tank crews began reporting Phantom Hellcat sightings across the entire front. German units halted advances to search for American armor that wasn't there. This disrupted offensive timetables Model's plan required to succeed. Captured German documents from late December revealed the doctrinal crisis developing. A tactical bulletin distributed on December 21st stated with brutal honesty that American M18 tank destroyers operate outside conventional armored engagement parameters. Standard counter-armor procedures are ineffective against these weapons, the bulletin continued. Units encountering M18s should request air support and withdraw to defensive positions. This represented complete abandonment of offensive armor doctrine that had brought Germany 4 years of victories. The admission that German armor should retreat from American tank destroyers would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. The Tiger I had been designed specifically to achieve battlefield dominance through superior firepower and protection. Now, German commanders were ordering these invincible weapons to flee from vehicles with 1/4 their armor thickness. Staff Sergeant Lawrence Mitchell commanded an M18 in the 823rd Tank Destroyer Battalion. He described the changing dynamic with soldiers' directness. Early in the war, we ran from Tigers, Mitchell recalled. By December 44th, they were running from us. Not because we had better armor or bigger guns. We were just faster than they could think. By the time they figured out where we were already somewhere else entirely. The speed advantage created cascading tactical effects across the battlefield. German forces required fuel for extended reconnaissance and defensive repositioning. American Hellcats consumed fuel during rapid offensive strikes, but then retreated to concealed positions requiring no fuel expenditure. The mathematics favored American operations decisively. German defensive measures cost more resources than American offensive operations consumed. Intelligence summaries from Wehrmacht Army Group B headquarters showed increasing desperation as December progressed. December 22nd assessment stated with growing alarm that American tank destroyer tactics have negated our armored advantage. The summary recommended suspending offensive operations until effective countermeasures could be developed. Model rejected the recommendation outright. Hitler's offensive timeline demanded continued attacks, regardless of tactical realities on the ground. German soldiers began using dark humor to cope with the Hellcat threat that stalked them. Panzer crews called them Gespenster, which meant ghosts in German. The nickname reflected their daily experience perfectly. Vehicles that appeared without warning, killed with surgical precision, vanished as if they had never existed at all. Some German units reported refusing to advance through terrain suitable for Hellcat ambushes. They claimed mechanical problems or fuel shortages rather than admit fear was controlling their decisions. By late December 1944, American tank destroyer battalions had developed Hellcat employment into sophisticated operational art. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, operating in the Bastogne corridor, pioneered what they termed Thunder Run tactics. These were high-speed penetrations deep into German rear areas to attack supply columns and command posts. Captain Theodore Walsh commanded Company B of the 704th. He documented the tactical evolution with professional interest. We realized the Hellcat's speed allowed us to reach areas Germans considered completely secure, Walsh wrote. Their rear echelon units had minimal anti-armor capability. We could penetrate 15 kilometers behind their lines, create havoc for several minutes, extract before they organized any response. December 23rd at 0445 hours saw Walsh's company execute the first documented Thunder Run operation. 6 Hellcats departed friendly lines at maximum speed. They navigated through forest tracks German intelligence maps showed as impossible for armor. Within 40 minutes, They reached a German fuel depot near Houffalize. The engagement lasted exactly 7 minutes total time. 19 fuel trucks and 2 ammunition carriers were completely destroyed. Walsh's company returned to American lines by 06:30 hours without any casualties. The psychological impact of deep penetration raids exceeded their material damage significantly. German rear area commanders began requesting armored protection for routine supply convoys. Panthers and Tigers, desperately needed at the front, were diverted to escort duties. The reallocation of German armor to defensive roles represented complete reversal of their offensive doctrine. Radio intelligence units monitoring German communications documented the confusion spreading through enemy ranks. December 24th, Intercept recorded a frantic transmission. American armor reported at Houffalize, came the voice. Request immediate verification. Sector considered beyond enemy capability. December 25th brought another intercept. Supply convoy refuses to move without armored escort. Claim American tank destroyers operating in rear areas. The reports forced German commanders to defend everywhere, while concentrating nowhere. This violated every principle of successful military operations. The 610th Tank Destroyer Battalion developed complementary tactics they called Wolf Pack operations. Rather than operating in traditional platoons, they dispersed individual Hellcats across wide frontages with coordinated timing. Lieutenant Colonel Frank Harrison's operation order specified the technique with precision. Each vehicle operates independently until designated trigger time, Harrison wrote. All units engage simultaneously across entire sector. Enemy cannot determine main effort or respond effectively to distributed attacks. December 26th provided textbook demonstration of Wolf Pack effectiveness across the battlefield. 23 M18s from the 610th attacked German positions along a 15-kilometer front. Each Hellcat engaged a different target at precisely 1400 hours. German forces reported being attacked by an entire American armor division. In reality, they faced 24 vehicles operating independently with perfect timing coordination. The Germans attempted various countermeasures against Hellcat operations. Each proved ineffective against American mobility advantages. Ambush positions were established along likely approach routes. But American reconnaissance identified these positions. Hellcats simply used alternate routes through terrain Germans considered impossible. German tank destroyers were deployed specifically to hunt Hellcats in their own element. But the heavier German vehicles couldn't match American speed across difficult terrain. Luftwaffe air support was requested repeatedly for anti-armor missions. But winter weather and Allied air superiority made effective airstrikes impossible to coordinate. Desperation drove German commanders to increasingly extreme measures that violated their own doctrine. The 116th Panzer Division attempted to create mobile reaction forces using their fastest available vehicles. Panzer Y4s and Stug assault guns formed these rapid response elements. The concept called for immediate reaction to Hellcat sightings, engaging American tank destroyers before they could complete their standard attack cycle and disengage. December 27th, testing of this concept proved catastrophic for German forces. A German mobile reaction force of 8 Panzerfus responded to reports of Hellcats near Mannheim. They achieved road speed of 35 miles per hour. This was faster than their standard advance rate. What they encountered was a carefully prepared ambush that anticipated their response. The 629th Tank Destroyer Battalion had deliberately revealed 2 Hellcats to draw German armor into a killing zone. 6 additional M18s waited in concealment around the engagement area. The battle demonstrated why German countermeasures consistently failed against American innovation. German Panzer IVs, racing to engage two visible Hellcats, entered the ambush area at 15:23 hours. All 8 German vehicles were destroyed by 15:26 hours, total elapsed time. The 2 bait Hellcats never fired a single shot. The concealed M18s eliminated the entire German force before the visible vehicles needed to engage. The Germans were fighting a thinking enemy that anticipated and exploited their responses. Technical modifications developed during combat operations enhanced Hellcat effectiveness even further. Crews discovered that reversing at high speed after firing prevented German gunners from tracking their displacement effectively. The M18's powerful engine provided equal performance forward and reverse. This was a capability German tanks completely lacked. Crews began calling reverse speed engagements backdoor attacks. Sergeant Donald Price of the 820th Tank Destroyer Battalion perfected the backdoor technique through repeated practice. Approach target in reverse, maintaining visual contact through rear periscope. Price documented, stop, engage, and accelerate forward without turning around. Germans expected us to turn and flee. Instead, we were already moving away at maximum speed the instant our gun fired. The accumulation of tactical innovations created a weapon system far exceeding its original design parameters. The M18 Hellcat, conceived as a fast tank destroyer, had evolved into a multi-role armored vehicle. It provided direct fire support, deep reconnaissance, raid operations, and mobile defense capabilities. The transformation reflected American tactical flexibility against German doctrinal rigidity. By December 28th, German offensive operations in the Ardennes had effectively stalled completely. While multiple factors contributed to the failure, fuel shortages, weather, Allied air power, the role of M18 Hellcats in disrupting German armored operations was undeniable. American tank destroyer battalions had achieved strategic effect through tactical innovation. They proved that doctrinal evolution could overcome material disadvantage on the battlefield. The Battle of the Bulge concluded on January 25, 1945. German forces had been pushed back to their original starting positions. They had achieved none of their operational objectives despite initial surprise and commitment of their best remaining forces. While the failure resulted from multiple factors, post-war analysis identified the M18 Hellcat's contribution as tactically decisive. American tank destroyer battalions had fundamentally altered the calculus of armored warfare. Official U.S. Army records document M18 Hellcat performance during the Ardennes campaign with statistical precision. The operational period covered December 16, 1944 to January 25, 1945. Total Hellcats deployed across all tank destroyer battalions numbered 312 vehicles. German armored vehicles confirmed destroyed totaled 526 tanks and assault guns. American M18 losses numbered 42 vehicles total. Of these, 31 were recovered and returned to service after repairs. The kill ratio exceeded 5-to-1 in favor of the Hellcat. This was a remarkable achievement considering German forces included Tigers, Panthers, and veteran crews. More significantly, the M18 achieved these results while operating against the most concentrated German armored assault of the Western European campaign. The statistics validated the revolutionary concept that mobility could overcome armor protection in modern warfare. German military assessments documented in post-war interrogations conducted by the U.S. Army Historical Division acknowledged the decisive impact. General Otto Remmer commanded Führer-Begleit Brigade during the Ardennes offensive. He testified with professional honesty about American capabilities. The American fast tank destroyers changed everything, Remmer stated. We could not defend against weapons that appeared faster than we could respond. Our tactical doctrine assumed we could control engagement ranges. These vehicles controlled engagement timing instead. Colonel Hans von Luck, served as operations officer for the 116th Panzer Division. He provided more detailed analysis of the tactical revolution they faced. German armored doctrine emphasized frontal protection and direct fire superiority, von Luck explained. The Americans built a weapon that refused to fight on our terms completely. They attacked from flanks and rear at speeds that made our armor advantages irrelevant. We were fighting the next generation of armored warfare while still practicing the last generation's tactics. The lessons learned from Hellcat operations influenced American military doctrine for decades afterward. The U.S. Army's post-war tank destroyer review board concluded with recommendations for future development. Speed and mobility provide tactical flexibility that armor protection cannot match, the board stated. Future armored vehicle design should prioritize maneuverability over survivability when operating in fluid battlefield conditions. This conclusion represented vindication of Colonel Andrew Bruce's original concept. Velocity could prove more valuable than armor plate in modern combat. The principle would influence American armored development through the Cold War era. It contributed to designs like the M56 Scorpion airborne anti-tank gun. Eventually, it influenced the Stryker mobile gun system of recent decades. The psychological impact on German armored forces extended well beyond the Ardennes campaign itself. Wehrmacht tactical bulletins from January 1945 show persistent concern about American tank destroyer operations. Units receiving new Panthers and Tigers were explicitly warned about M18 capabilities. They received instructions to avoid engagement conditions favoring American mobility advantages. Allied intelligence officers noted that German armor became increasingly defensive after the Ardennes battle. Panzer divisions that had previously executed aggressive maneuver warfare began adopting static defensive positions. While fuel shortages and Allied air superiority contributed to this change, the Hellcats' demonstrated ability to punish mobile operations played a significant role. German tactical caution reflected hard-learned lessons about American innovation. The human cost of these tactical innovations was borne by the crews who operated Hellcats under combat conditions. Tank destroyer battalions suffered casualty rates comparable to infantry units despite being armored forces. The open-top turret that provided excellent visibility also exposed crews to artillery and small arms fire. The thin armor that enabled high speed provided minimal protection when enemy fire connected accurately. Veterans of M18 operations described the psychological pressure of operating a vehicle designed for speed rather than protection. Corporal James Henderson of the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion recalled the daily reality they faced. "You knew one good hit would kill you," Henderson remembered. The only protection was not being there when the shell arrived. Every engagement was a race against time. Kill them and move before they killed you. The stress was constant and never let up. Annual reunions of tank destroyer veterans beginning in 1948 brought together men who had pioneered mobile armored warfare. These gatherings, documented by military historians, revealed complex emotions. Pride in their tactical achievements mixed with acknowledgement of the terrible price they paid. The survivors understood they had fundamentally changed armored combat while losing friends to a doctrine that prioritized mission accomplishment over crew protection. The National Armor and Cavalry Heritage Foundation preserves M18 Hellcat vehicles and operational records for future study. 3 restored Hellcats remain fully operational for demonstration at military history events. These machines still achieve their original 55 miles per hour top speed. They provide tangible evidence of the engineering achievement that supported tactical revolution 7 decades ago. The final assessment belongs to General George Patton, 3rd Army commander during the Ardennes campaign. In his report to Supreme Allied Commander Eisenhower, Patton wrote with characteristic directness about American achievements. The M18 tank destroyer proved itself the most effective American armored vehicle in the European theater. Its ability to appear where needed, strike decisively, and withdraw before enemy response saved countless American lives. It destroyed German armored capability through superior tactics rather than superior protection. Speed properly employed defeats armor every time. 8 words in Patton's conclusion captured the essential lesson of Hellcat service. Speed properly employed defeats armor. The German Tiger weighed 56 tons and mounted the most powerful tank gun of the war. The M18 Hellcat weighed 18 tons and mounted a competent but not exceptional weapon system. Yet in the snowy forests of the Ardennes, speed defeated weight decisively. Mobility overcame armor protection completely. Tactical innovation proved more valuable than material superiority on the battlefield. Today, the M18 Hellcat stands as testament to a fundamental truth of modern warfare. Victory belongs not to the most heavily armored forces. Victory belongs to those who can think faster and move quicker than the enemy can respond. The German commanders who watched their Tigers burn in Belgian snow learned this lesson far too late. The American crews who drove their Hellcats into history proved that in mechanized warfare, the fastest gun wins the fight.